But still it leaves us with two options. One is, I am okay as I am. I know I have these difficulties, but then I am okay as I am. This is what I am. The other option is, I am not okay as I am. Now, this part is also important, that Supreme Consciousness has its presence within us, so that light comes, illuminates this dark corner, and one who has been touched by that ray can never be the same again. The divine has been that very clever child who has hid himself so effectively. It takes much greater effort to find it. And so it has set up a very effective game of hide and seek, which it made sure will go on for millions of years. The divine will keep hiding and the human beings will keep seeking. So, in practice, actually it does not make too much of a difference whether we consider ourselves basically bad or basically good, because in practice what it means is that we have to work on ourselves. We have to work hard because it is not so easy to improve. And no matter how hard we work, our efforts will not be enough. We will have to invoke divine grace. We will need divine grace to see us through. In our current series, based on the Mother's works compiled in The Great Adventure, today we shall take up the passages on pages 65 through 67, because we deal with the same subject. First, read out these passages. The title of this one is Face Yourself. And the Mother says, every time you are afraid to face yourself and hide carefully from yourself what prevents you from advancing, well, it is as though you were building a wall on the way. Later, you must demolish it to pass on. It is better to do your task immediately. Look yourself straight in the face. Do not try to sugarcoat the bitter pill. It is very bitter. All the weaknesses, uglinesses, all kinds of nasty little things which one has inside, there are lots of them. What petty meanness, small stupidity, little vanity, ignorance, bad will is still there, hidden in the corner, preventing me from crossing the threshold of this new discovery. Who is there in me, who is so small, so mean and obstinate, hiding there like a worm in a fruit, so that I may not be able to see it? If you are sincere, you find it. You always sugarcoat the pill. The sugarcoating is a kind of what is called mental understanding of oneself. So one coats as thickly with sugar as possible in order to hide well from oneself what is there, the worm in the fruit. It is no use at all hiding things and pushing them behind like this and imagining they are not there because one has put a veil in front. It is much better to see oneself as one is, provided one is ready to give up this way of being. If you come allowing all the bad movements to rise to the surface, to show themselves, if you offer them, if you say, well, this is how I am, and if at the same time you have the aspiration to be different, then this second of presence is extremely useful. You can, yes, in a few seconds, receive the help you need to get rid of them, while if you come like a little saint and go away content without having received anything, it is not very useful. Automatically the consciousness acts like that, and it is like the ray that brings light where there was not any. Only what is needed is to be in a state where one wants to give up the thing, to get rid of it, not to cling to it. If one sincerely wants to pull it out of oneself, make it disappear, then it is very useful. Instead of driving the wrong movement underground, it is to be offered. It is to place the thing, the movement itself, to project it into the light. If we can project our sensation or our activity or our perception into that light, that will bring the cure. Instead of suppressing or rejecting it as something to be destroyed, it cannot be destroyed. It has to be projected into the light. Instead of seeking to throw away far from oneself certain things which one does not accept and which produce an imbalance in the being, instead of doing that, to accept them, take them as part of oneself and offer them up. They do not want to be offered, but there is a way of compelling them. The resistance is diminished in the proportion as we diminish in us our sense of disapprobation. If we can replace this sense of disapprobation by a higher understanding, then we succeed. It is much more easy. As you'll see, these passages are about our failings and weaknesses, and there's no really point trying to emphasize that we are all imperfect. We have no difficulty in accepting that, and that we have these weaknesses, and most of us have, or at least would like to have, an urge, an aspiration for overcoming these weaknesses, for overcoming these imperfections. And we also have no difficulty in accepting that in spite of this urge, in spite of this aspiration, we also have an inner resistance to change. Which means that in a way we are made up of parts. A part of us aspires to get rid of these imperfections, of these weaknesses and failings, and we also have a part that wants to cling to these weaknesses. We are, in a way, in love with our weaknesses. So that is what makes the process of trying to get rid of these weaknesses extremely difficult. And that is why we need so much discussion, and so many methods and ways and means have been suggested, and so many analogies given to try and make us understand how this process might be made a little easier, this difficult process of overcoming our own weaknesses. Last time also we had more or less the same topic, and the title was the psychic mirror. That is, we can use our psychic being, our divine essence, as a sort of mirror in which we can see ourselves and discover our weaknesses. And that is what we find at the beginning of today's passage also. Every time you are afraid to face yourself and hide carefully from yourself what prevents you from advancing, well, it is as though you were building a wall on the way. Later, you must demolish it to pass on. It is better to do your task immediately. So, we should not hide our difficulties from ourselves. We should be ready to face them. And how can we face them? By looking in that mirror. Because the mirror does not hide anything. It reproduces exactly what is in front of it. And if we are in front of that mirror, we can see ourselves exactly as we are, discover our problems, our difficulties, our weaknesses, our failings, and then we can go about trying to remove them. Because the first thing is that we have to make no effort to hide them, as the mother says. Because hiding would mean trying to avoid that mirror, trying not to go in front of the mirror, as if not being able to see those weaknesses in that mirror will somehow make them disappear. So we have to accept it, just as the first step towards knowledge is accepting that we are ignorant. The first step towards removing any weakness is to accept that we have the weakness. So that is the starting point, and for making that beginning, we have to make sure that we are not trying to hide our weaknesses, our difficulties, which are creating these obstacles in the path of progress. We are not hiding them from ourselves. And therefore, we should not avoid that mirror and be ready to face ourselves and look ourselves straight into that mirror. Look yourself straight in the face. Straight in the face. Do not try to sugarcoat the pill. Now, what is this sugarcoating the pill? Sugarcoating the pill means, we are ready to stand in front of the mirror, but after applying cosmetics, so that we don't see the blemishes. So that is sugarcoating the pill, which means that, we are ready to face and yet not ready to face exactly. And while going through that motion of standing in front of the mirror, we try to apply those cosmetics which would hide those blemishes, sort of sugarcoating the problem. And this can happen in relation to some of the very basic difficulties that are there on the path of sadhana, like food, sex, anger, violence. All these are basic instincts which we have, and then there are ways of accepting them and yet trying to sugarcoat them. For example, food. We have a great attachment not only to food but to a certain type of food, a certain amount of food, a certain way of eating. And one of the problems that the mother faced from the seekers staying in the ashram in Pondicherry was that they would say, well, this is food I'm not accustomed to, and therefore I cannot digest it properly. I can't digest this food, it doesn't suit me. I know that was a sort of an excuse given to try and get the type of food to which they were accustomed. Now this is sugarcoating. You see, why not saying that I'm not ready to have this type of food, but I'm ready to have anything, but it does not suit me because I can't digest it properly. So, that is sugarcoating. And the same applies to other weaknesses also. For example, sex. Well, there can be obvious forms of sex, and as you can see, there can be subtle ways of expressing sex, the sexual impulse. And those subtle forms of expression are like sugarcoating. Then violence and anger. Well, yes, I am angry, but it is righteous anger. It is anger which is justified, fully justified, because we should not be tolerating anything that is wrong. So if I observe something wrong, naturally I have a right to be angry. And sometimes violence may be necessary. Even Lord Krishna has justified violence in the Gita. So we can sugarcoat anger, violence, food, sex, everything. All these weaknesses, all these major obstacles in the path of sadhana can be sugar-coated. So the mother is saying no sugar-coating. And what is sugar-coating? As she says later on in the passage, sugar-coating is a type of mental understanding, a rationalization, which means that we are trying to find an explanation. We are trying to find an explanation for our weakness, as if trying to justify it, make it look not as bad as it is. And naturally, corresponding to how much we justify it, we are also trying to reduce our willpower, reduce our determination to get rid of it. So we are defeating the very purpose of facing the difficulty by sugarcoating it, by applying the cosmetics while standing in front of the mirror, because that makes it look, well, it is there, but it doesn't seem to matter much. It doesn't matter much, it can be justified, it is not showing that much, and therefore one can live with it, which means that our willpower, our determination to get rid of it correspondingly goes down. And therefore we have to face it, and we have to face it exactly as it is, not trying to sugarcoat it. It is very bitter. Facing our weaknesses exactly as they are can be very bitter. It can be very embarrassing. It can be a source of great self-torture, because we are not ready to accept ourselves exactly as we are. So trying to see ourselves exactly as we are can be a bitter experience. All the weaknesses, uglinesses, all kinds of nasty little things which one has inside, there are lots of them. Petty meanness, small stupidity, little vanity, ignorance, bad will, all these things are still there, hidden in a corner, preventing me from crossing the threshold of this new discovery. All these are difficulties in the path of making that discovery. What is that discovery? Discovering our true identity, discovering what we really are. That we are not the body, mind and intellect with which we normally identify ourselves. We are not the person who has a name. We are not the person who has certain relationships. But we are, at the deepest level, the divine. So, understanding our true identity, making that discovery, understanding what we truly are, we are on the threshold of that discovery, but then we remain on the threshold. We can't cross that threshold, which would actually lead us to the discovery, and it is because of these weaknesses which are so difficult to get rid of. Who is there in me who is so small, so mean and obstinate, hiding there like a worm in a fruit, so that I may not be able to see it. The fruit is rotten, but we can't find out why the fruit is rotten, because the worm is buried deep inside the fruit. And something which is there to help us discover this worm, the psychic mirror, we are not ready to face that mirror. We don't face, and if when we stand in front of it, we use cosmetics, which means that one way or the other, we remain mixed up. On one hand, wanting to get rid of these imperfections, move towards perfection, which is another way of looking at making this discovery of our true essence. And discovering our true essence is just one step behind discovering the true essence of the entire creation, which happens to be the same. That is, the entire creation is a manifestation of the divine. So we are just on that threshold, and yet we cannot cross that threshold. We may say that we are not really on that threshold, maybe we are far away from the threshold. But in a way, being a human being itself is being on that threshold, because that is what every human being is capable of, and that is the uniqueness of the human species, that we have this capacity of going beyond ourselves, going beyond the mental level of perception, going to that level at which these deeper truths of existence can not only be understood but even experienced. So that is what the human birth is about, and therefore in a way we are on that threshold, and yet we cannot cross that threshold because of these obstacles. And unless we are ready to look at these obstacles, face them, face them right in front of us and accept them, they will remain hidden like the worm that is there in the fruit, and yet we cannot really see why the fruit is rotten, because the worm is hiding somewhere deep inside. It is no use at all hiding things and pushing them behind like this and imagining they are not there because one has put a veil in front. So now here we are not using the mirror, or maybe using the mirror and still not being able to see because we have put a veil in front. So one way or the other, we keep hiding from ourselves. If you come allowing all the bad movements to rise to the surface, to show themselves, if you offer them, if you say, well, this is how I am, and if at the same time you have the aspiration to be different, then this second of presence is extremely useful. This second of presence, this even this extremely brief, momentary aspiration and acceptance of how we exactly are. Well, this is how I am, and if at the same time you have the aspiration to be different, then this second of presence is extremely useful. You can, yes, in a few seconds, receive the help you need to get rid of them. So the help comes, and the help comes in the form of that awakening, in the form of that ray of the Supreme Consciousness that somehow touches us and transforms us. While if you come like a little saint and go away content without having received anything, it is not very useful. On the other hand, if we try to pretend to be a little saint and go away content, then it doesn't help much. Which means that the hiding from ourselves is what the mother is calling that we pretend to be a saint. Well, I am a saint, nothing much wrong with me. The other option is not to hide ourselves from our own weaknesses, face them and accept them. Now, not hiding them and accepting that, well, this is how I am, that is facing oneself. But still it leaves us with two options. One is, I am okay as I am. I know I have these difficulties, but then I am okay as I am. This is what I am. The other option is, I am not okay as I am. Now, this part is also important. To say that I am not okay as I am is reflects the strength of the aspiration. This is not a minor point, because there are people who are happy as they are. These are the people whom the mother calls the nature's favorites. That is what human nature is about. Human nature is such that we are primarily mental creatures. We live at the mental level, and therefore this aspiration is not necessarily very strong in many. And in a way, there are a large number of people who are happy to live a life which is in keeping with the ordinary human nature and spend their entire lifetime that way. These are the people whom the mother calls the favorites, the nature's favorites, because they live as per the human nature, ordinary human nature. Now, and the mother says, in fact, sometimes there's no point trying to even disturb them, because they will live primarily to live a worldly life. They look upon life as consisting of growing up, going to school, college, getting a degree, getting a job, having a family, raising the children, having a house, and saying that, well, life has been well spent. And in the course of all this, they will have successes and failures, they will have happiness and unhappiness, and there will be periods of stress and celebrations, and there will be mournings. So, they'll go through these ups and downs and accept it as a part of life. And in spite of all the difficulties and the suffering and the misery that they go through, cling to this life and like it and be happy and it as it is. Understand ourselves and also are ready. This is what human beings are about, and since I am human, it is okay to be like that. I am okay as I am. Then again, that entire exercise of trying to face ourselves and finding a way of getting rid of the imperfections, that question does not arise. So, facing oneself is not enough. It's also important to have that determination to say, I am not okay as I am. This is how I am, but that is not okay with me. It is only when we have that strong aspiration, intense and sincere aspiration, that the help comes along. And that is what the mother talks about in the next few lines. What is that help like? Automatically the consciousness with a capital C here, that is the supreme consciousness. Automatically the consciousness acts like that. It is like the ray that brings light brings light where there was not any. So, where there was no light, where there was all darkness, that ray of light from the supreme consciousness comes. That supreme consciousness has its presence within us. So that light comes, illuminates this dark corner, and one who has been touched by that ray can never be the same again. Even if this ray comes only for a brief period, even if it is only a glimpse, even if it is only a momentary touch, that has such a lasting impression that transforms the person and he is never the same again. So that is what this ray of light is about. But then, it is a two-way process. Unless that aspiration is there, this ray can remain asleep, it can stay dormant, it will not throw the light at that weak point. Which means that we have to do our little bit, and then there is a response. In our integral yoga, we have both these all the time, that yes, there is an ascent and there is a descent. There is a call that we send, and there is a response from the divine. So both these things are there and they go hand in hand. So we accept that this is how I am. We show our discontent. I am not okay as I am. I want to get rid of these weaknesses. And then that help comes from that supreme consciousness in the form of this ray of light that illuminates the dark hidden corner. Now the process appears so simple, but then why is it so difficult still? Only what is needed is to be in a state where one wants to. Wants is in italics, emphasis there. There's an emphasis on wants to. Really, truly wants to. The whole of us should want to, not a part of us. In a state where one wants to give up the thing, to get rid of it, not to cling to it and keep it. Not only we are sometimes happy as we are and do not have that much of intensity in the aspiration, sometimes in fact we want to cling to the weaknesses. We are in love with our weaknesses. On that there is a beautiful passage in Savitri. Book 6, Canto 2, page 447. A power came in to veil the eternal light. A power opposed to the eternal will diverts the messages of the infallible word, contorts the contours of the cosmic plan. In the process of manifestation, when the one decided to be many and decided to manifest itself in the creation, somehow during that process of creation, there also got created a power that was opposed sort of in a way to the eternal light. A power came in to veil the eternal light. That veil which hid this eternal light also became a part of that creation. A power opposed to the eternal will diverts the messages of the infallible word. The word of the divine is infallible, but then its message gets diverted by another power, the power which also came up as a result of this manifestation in the form of creation. And this power contorts the contours of the cosmic plan. It distorts the shape of the cosmic plan. Now, this is what we call Maya. That is, the capacity of the divine to appear different from what it is. So, this power which creates this distortion is what Maya is about. That is, it creates this appearance of being different from what the reality is. The reality is that all creation is a manifestation of the divine. But it does not appear divine, in fact looks sometimes very undivine. Now, that is Maya. Now, Maya is not sort of a fraud or a cheating, which the divine has, a fraud played by the divine on man, trying to cheat us in some way. It is a great capacity, a capacity for self-limitation. Along with differentiation, a capacity for self-limitation and self-oblivion. That is, trying to appear as if it is not there. This is a great capacity. When children play hide and seek, the more effectively a child can hide himself, the more clever that child is. So it's not, it's a capacity, it's a strength. So it's not a weakness of the divine, it is a great capacity of the divine, the Maya also. But then this is what Maya is about, and it is because the divine has been that very clever child who has hid himself so effectively, it takes much greater effort to find it. And so it has set up a very effective game of hide and seek, which it made sure will go on for millions of years. The divine will keep hiding and the human beings will keep seeking. So that is the game it created in the process of trying to hide itself. And that it could do by creating this power which created this diversion of the message of the infallible word and contortion of the contours of the cosmic plan. That is what the divine did. And as a result of this distortion, what happens is, a whisper lures to evil the human heart. The human heart is lured, it's attracted, is tempted by evil. Evil has an attraction for us. So that is why we cling to it. A whisper lures to evil the human heart. It seals up wisdom's eyes. We have some wisdom, but then those wisdom's eyes get covered, We have a bandage over those eyes. It seals up the wisdom's eyes, the soul's regard. We have a soul, the divine essence, but the look, the watchful look, regard, that is what regard is. A look that tries to examine, tries to keep a watch, that also is sealed up. A whisper lures to evil the human heart. It seals up wisdom's eyes, the soul's regard. So the wisdom's eyes and the soul's regard, they all get obscured by this distortion that has been created. It is the origin of our suffering here. It is this distortion, this is the origin of our suffering here. It binds earth to calamity and pain. So this is the very root of all pain and suffering. This all must conquer who would bring down God's peace. So all those who want to bring down God's peace must conquer this force, this power, which was an inevitable, or you can say was an accompanying sort of event which took place when the divine manifested itself in the creation. This hidden foe lodged in the human breast, man must overcome or miss his higher fate. His higher fate, man's higher fate, his ultimate destiny is union with the divine. But then he will miss it till he overcomes this hidden foe, this hidden enemy lodged in our breast that lures us, that tempts us to evil and prevents our wisdom and our soul to provide that check, to provide that solution or remedy for this. So long as we are not able to conquer this hidden foe, we will not be able to overcome it. Man must overcome or miss his higher fate. This is the inner war without escape. This is the Mahabharata, the war of Kurukshetra, within each one of us that has to be fought. A power came in to veil the eternal light, a power opposed to the eternal will, diverts the messages of the infallible word, contorts the contours of the cosmic plan. A whisper lures to evil the human heart, it seals up wisdom's eyes, the soul's regard. It is the origin of our suffering here, it binds earth to calamity and pain. This all must conquer who would bring down God's peace. This hidden foe lodged in the human breast, man must overcome or miss his higher fate. This is the inner war without escape. None of us can escape this war. So this is why we are in love with our weaknesses and cling to them, because that is also a part of the design of creation. Instead of driving the wrong movement underground, just brushing it aside, hiding it under the carpet, driving it underground, it is to be offered. Instead of doing any of these things, it is to be offered. It is to place the thing, the movement itself, to project it into the light. It has to be offered to that light, exposed to that light, so that the light comes and we can deal with it. So, this bidirectional effort again, that we have to expose it to the light, and if we expose it to the light, the ray of light does come. They do not want to be offered. These weaknesses do not want to be offered because we cling to them. So that's what makes the process difficult. They do not want to be offered, but there is a way of compelling them, compelling these opposing forces, compelling this foe in the human breast, as Aurobindo calls it. There is a way of compelling that foe. The resistance is diminished in the proportion as we can diminish in us our sense of disapprobation. If we can replace the sense of disapprobation by a higher understanding, then we succeed. It is much more easy. Now, disapprobation, is disapproval on moral grounds. Now, when we disapprove of our difficulties on moral grounds, that it is immoral, it is wrong, it is a bad thing to do, which is a common tendency. So, we disapprove of it at the mental level on moral grounds. When we do that, the mother says that is not very effective. We can offer the weakness more effectively if we disapprove of this from a higher level, at a level of a higher understanding, as she calls it, instead of mere disapproval on moral grounds. Now, what is the difference between the two? The difference is that disapproving on moral grounds is a mental construct. And it's based on a certain type of reasoning, why it is wrong. And so it's a sort of a reasoned rejection. This reasoned rejection based on moral grounds in terms of a fixed code of conduct cannot be as effective as trying to look at this defect in us, look at this weakness of ours from a higher plane of consciousness. From a plane of consciousness which is higher than the mental, which is higher than the level from where we get this capacity to reason. That is, go beyond logic, look at it from that level. If we look at this weakness of ours from that higher level, a level beyond the mental, what happens is that we find that there's at once a discrepancy, a disharmony between this plane of consciousness and this weakness. Because that plane of consciousness is perfect, it is pure, and therefore this impurity, this imperfection does not harmonize with it. It does not match it, does not go with it. And that creates at once a disharmony. And when the disharmony is created, it starts making us feel uneasy. We feel uncomfortable. And this discomfort that we experience, this acute discomfort that we experience, provides that motivation for developing that aspiration. That cannot come if we have merely reasoned out through a reasoned rejection that this is something bad and therefore it should not be done. That at a mental level does not create that uneasiness, it does not create that type of strong motivation to get rid of it. And that is why the mother says that instead of that disapprobation, if we can replace this disapprobation by a higher understanding, then it will be much more effective. Because, that will create that uneasiness, that acute unpleasantness, that restlessness, which is necessary for getting rid of it. So what we have basically done today is to talk about the fact that we accept that yes, we are imperfect, and if we are ready to face those imperfections and at the same time are not content with ourselves as we are and want to sincerely change and improve, then this is a very effective way of doing it. That is, getting that light from within, exposing this difficulty to that light, and as a result, creating that sense of uneasiness which will motivate us to get rid of this difficulty. I thought before I end, I'll have a little sort of digression from here. One thing is clear that yes, we are imperfect. But then what are we basically? Are we basically bad and we need to improve? Or are we basically good and it's just that the goodness is hidden somewhere? We have spiritual philosophies which argue on both lines. There are philosophies which argue that we are basically bad, man is a sinner, and he should try to become better, and the better he becomes, the better his life will be and the better the world will be. But all the same, since man is basically a sinner, he has no choice but to turn to the divine, and if he takes refuge in the divine, then he can expect a better life after death. In the next world, where he goes after spending his time here on earth, he'll have a much better life. Which means that we accept the fact that the world will basically remain a dirty place. We try our best to improve it, but since we are basically bad, not much can be done, and the only hope of redemption is in some other world outside this. But Vedantic philosophy, and particularly the emphasis that Aurobindo gives, is just the opposite. That we are not basically bad, we are basically good, because we are potentially divine, as Swami Vivekananda put it. We are potentially divine. Not divine right now, but potentially divine, because that is our true essence, that is our most fundamental reality. So we are basically good, but then through some distortion during the process of manifestation, and it seems to be a distortion which was purposeful with a purpose, we are imperfect on the surface. So deep within we are basically good, we are basically divine, but the surface has become imperfect, and therefore if we are able to remove these imperfections and let that divinity within emerge and manifest itself, we can create a much better world right here. That is, heaven can be brought down to earth, because man is capable of going all the way and eventually through the course of spiritual evolution expressing almost fully, if not entirely fully, the divine consciousness itself. So that is the other way of looking. So there are both these ways in which things have been looked at, but considering ourselves to be basically good, potentially divine, capable of expressing the divine here on earth, has an optimistic ring around it. Gives us a great sense of optimism, courage, and faith to work on ourselves. Either way, looking at either way, we have to work on ourselves. Whether we consider ourselves basically bad or basically good, have a higher nature and a lower nature. As sometimes said, we have both a higher nature and a lower nature. Either way, we have to work on ourselves so that we express more and more our higher nature. And either way, it is also accepted that because we are basically weak, even if we are not basically sinners, at least we have a tendency to cling to our weaknesses. Therefore, we have to work hard on ourselves. And no matter how hard we work, that will never be enough. We need divine grace. That also, either way, it is accepted. So, in practice, actually, it does not make too much of a difference whether we consider ourselves basically bad or basically good, because in practice, what it means is that we have to work on ourselves. We have to work hard because it is not so easy to improve. And no matter how hard we work, our efforts will not be enough. We will have to invoke divine grace. We will need divine grace to see us through. So, in other words, we have in us these two creatures, as someone put it, two dogs inside, a very nice, small, cuddly little pup, very sweet, but very docile and, very good pup, and another big, wild, dog that barks loudly and is very strong, aggressive. We have both these within us. Which one of the two will win eventually? Which one will win? The one we feed. Because the one which will win will be the one that will survive. And the one which will survive is the one whom we feed. And what is food? What is the type of food that these dogs can be given? The food for these dogs is using the dog, bringing the dog forwards, and organizing our life around it. So the one that we put to service by bringing it forwards and organizing our life around it will be the one that will get fed. The other will get starved. The one that is fed is the one that will survive, and the one that survives will be the one that will win.